If you look at the drug dealers in the 90s, they were very powerful. They controlled communities. And they controlled our local police stations even. Right? If you look at our drug dealers today, they don't have as much money, maybe a few. But at that time, if you look at the Lontis and the Stachis and all these people, they were powerful. You know, I mean, to go into a community like Sea Point and take it over completely, from Salt River right up, take it over. You don't see that today. We are in the process of wanting to recruit people, wanting people to stand with us. And we don't want to harm that, right? We want people to see that our main aim and objective is to fight crime, to reduce crime, to get drugs off our roads and our streets and our communities, out of our communities, and also gangsterism. It's a big contributor, right, towards even police killings, right? Our youth being killed, right? And that is what we stand for. I was born in Bridgetown. I'm still there at the very same place. Bridgetown is in Athlone. 60 years later, I'm still living in the very same house that I was born. You know, at that time, the midwife would come to the house when your mom was pregnant. You don't go to a clinic. You were actually born in a room. And I'm still living in that same house 60 years later. Look, Bridgetown was always, for, you know, if you grow up in a community, you don't seem to see the wrongs in that community because you become part and parcel of that community. For the first half of my life, I didn't realize how bad it was. I always thought it was a nice community, but Bridgetown was the birthplace, I can almost say the birthplace of the American gang. So Bridgetown was always seen as the founding community and the headquarters of the American gang, right? With guys like Jackie Lonti being the leader of the gang, came from prison and really started taking over the community. But at the time, like I said, we did not realize, you know, how gangsterism really negatively impacted our communities. It was seen as a norm, probably because that is how it existed before 1994, when we had our first democratic election. So we know before that, when the apartheid regime was still in power, that was one of the methods they used to function in communities. They themselves would start up gangs, and they control that gang leaders, right? And that is one way they would control a community. They don't have to come into a whole community. They just have one man that will answer to them. So, yeah, I think this is all stuff that actually came out when the mainstream PAGAD started. This was stuff that was spoken by the leadership of PAGAD at that time. Obviously, now we had research to do. We had to see, is this the truth? And yes, it was discovered this is how it was. And knowing some of that gang leaders at the time, you knew they never had the power to do what they did. So they had this big conglomerate behind them, right? Controlling them, telling them what to do, funding them even. So yes, unfortunately, after 94, nothing really changed. And some of these guys even got onto platforms for political parties, right? Being supported by political parties. And I think that is where an organization like PAGAD came about. Because people's expectation was that this is going to change, right? And nothing changed. Many of my family members were part and parcel of PAGAD from 96, 97. Looking at the whole drug situation in Cape Town and the drugs getting worse and more, I think that time cocaine started. Before that, it was more Mendrex and Dagga. So people understood the effects of Mendrex and Dagga. But when cocaine came about and other more serious designer drugs, it shook Cape Town because the behavioral pattern of the drug addicts changed. Obviously, that drugs being more expensive also, and the demand was more for the individual, and that led to individuals starting to steal from their own houses. It got so out of hand that people became desperate, right? So my family members being part and parcel of that organization and me seeing the fighting going on, PAGAD taking to the streets, gangsters forming organizations like CORE and to stand up against PAGAD. I think maybe I just felt compelled to be part and parcel of something positive for a change, after also living maybe my first half of my life a bit negatively. Like I say, accepting the norms of society. So drugs and gangsterism have become a norm. I can testify myself that I was shot a few times. My family, they shot at one stage. They shot about 50, 60 shots through the window of my brother's house. And I was sitting, myself and him was sitting at the table. Luckily for us, we're still alive, right? But yes, there was a lot of danger involved at that time. But we were in it and we had to do what we had to do. What I can say, the years 96, 97, luckily, I think the gangsters was more afraid of the PAGAD than the PAGAD was afraid of the gangsters, right? And I can say today, witnessing all that, I personally think that the law saved gangsterism at that time. The law actually came to their aid. The police would stand at gangsters' house, at merchants' houses, protecting them against the people marching there, etc., etc. So if I look at that whole fight, even not being part of it at the time, I can tell you this much. Gangsters were scared. Very, very, very scared. In fact, they were so scared that they appealed for help to officials. And personally, I think it should have been the other way around. The officials should have supported the people, right? People fighting for another type of freedom. So how is it possible that the very person that fought for freedom against apartheid now see that people are enslaved in another way, and they support that, and they don't support the person that wants to free himself? So that is one thing that I've witnessed there, you know. That is another form of injustice that took place. And looking at this whole scenario from the outside in, I thought to myself, no man, I must become a part and parcel of those people, against all odds. So for the police also, for our government officials also, they should sit still and think and ask themselves, Why is this people doing this? What is this people fighting for? This is innocent, hard-working people. Why would they risk their lives to go march to a drug dealer's house? Why would they risk their lives to throw canisters back at the police, knowing that the police have got the authority and the power to shoot them also? Why would they do that? And tomorrow, this very father or this mother must go back to work. In the period of 98, 99, 2000, I think that was now when the police thought, or the government, not the police, the government thought, we have to break this thing up. Yeah, because this people is becoming too powerful. Right? This people has got a massive support. And so massive, I think, had PAGAD to go political at the time, they would have been the rulers of Cape Town at this point in time. They had hundreds of thousands of people at any given time supporting them. Yeah, I think that was when authorities decided now is the time to stop this. And then also there's outside influence, right? There's influence from countries outside South Africa who don't want to see organizations like this rise. And PAGAD was seen as a Muslim organization. The Islamophobia thingy came in, or the Islamse gevaar thingy came in. There was no more swart gevaar because why? The swart gevaar took over the country now. So now there has to be something else. And I think that was a fear at the time. And most PAGAD leaders at the time were locked up. Even the leader of the PAGAD at the time, the coordinator of the organization, were locked up. Most of the committee members were locked up. Most of prominent members were locked up. So obviously it will affect the organization negatively. I got locked up in year 2000. It was for alleged bombing case. And I was awaiting trial for plus 3 years. Then all charges were dropped against all 4 of us that was involved in the case. I can honestly tell you, my life was never at risk in prison. I think the respect for PAGAD members in prison at the time was huge, was great. God is great, you know. I think the gangsters inside prison think differently when they're inside than what they're outside. You know, their people have got a tendency to think more sober. And even they realize that they're dragging down their communities. They're destroying their communities out there. So the language inside there is different than the language out here. From the very same individual that is outside and now he goes inside. So PAGAD members, you can guarantee that they were very few of them maybe felt threatened in prison because of the respect that the other prisoners had for them. I think when I came out, there wasn't much activity on the outside from PAGAD. They still existed. They still had meetings. They still, I think, for one, the first march was when I came out. We had a march in Tafelsig, and then we had a march in Bridgetown. And me being one of the first guys that was actually released from prison, obviously you came out with a bit of a mandate from the guys that is inside. This thing must be reborn. And I tried to play that role, yes, up until the time that we formed a splinter group away from the mainstream organization. But in that same time that I was released in late 2003, 2004, I was also shot twice, right? I was shot once walking to mosque with my 5-year-old son. And then at another occasion, I think 3 months later, in my driveway, I was shot. Again, I survived, luckily, thank God. yeah, and that also didn't stop me from being part and parcel of this. I think this has become part of our bloodstream. You know, most of the PAGAD men and women, they've given themselves over to this. Right? They will probably doing this till the day they die. I think the old regime PAGAD, the mainstream PAGAD, had a very dogmatic approach. And the level of transparency was not good, was not great. And that led to many of our guys coming out of prison after 5, 8, 9 years, and some of them longer even, challenging the leadership of the organization to a certain extent. Not meaning to challenge them, but asking questions, you know. For instance, one of the things, why don't we go political? Why don't we form a political party and try and change things politically? Try and use our political influence, because we had the support at the time. But that obviously was not one of the aims of the then leadership of PAGAD, who's still the leadership today. But like I said, we formed a splinter group. So asking questions, you know, non-transparency also always lead to infighting. Right? And many of our members just withdrew. Some, the mainstream will claim that they were expelled members. But nevertheless, we are still here. We formed the G-Force in 2011. Many of that members that was in prison at the time are part and parcel of the G-Force. And most of the mainstream PAGAD of then, it's not people that really spend time in prison. A few of them, yes. Like the now national coordinator. He was in prison with us, in fact, in the same case that I was. But yeah, most of the guys that came out of prison is part and parcel of the G-Force today. We had an old man that was with us at the time. He's passed on now. We called him Butayu. And when we started with this planning, we came up with the name Peace. And when I came to him and I showed him this plan and I showed him the name, he said to me, why must we change our name? This is how people know us. People know us by this name. And then a day or two later, I came to him and he said to me, he's got a perfect name for us. We call ourselves the G-Force. And if you look at the MK party today, what a wise move Jacob Zuma did by calling his party Umkhonto Wisizwe, the military wing of the party that he always belonged to, the ANC. So it was basically the same stroke. So Zuma came a few years later after us. We made that move. He made his move. Like I said, PAGAD G-Force we started officially in 2011. Right? We started in a very small community called Status Heights. Look, at that time, many of our members were fresh from prison. Right? Whatever they had in terms of infrastructure in their own personal lives was gone, because they spent many years behind bars. They had to rebuild themselves now, starting their businesses all over again, getting jobs, etc., etc. So we were about 10 people that formed a core group of founder members of the G-Force in 2011. And then we moved to communities like Lentegeur, even to Esterrivier. We formed partnerships with a few other organizations. But like the time went on, obviously things changed, you know. The pressure of authorities was still there. We were still very much harassed by cops, etc. So yeah, we went very low profile at some stage. But hoping with the political situation changing in our country now, we see we've got people, ex-prisoners that is also in parliament now. Besides now political prisoners, people that went to prison for other crimes, like the PA leader, is also in parliament now. He was never a political prisoner like Nelson Mandela and the Zumas and other guys. So hoping that our authorities will see that things need to change. Our young people are dying. Our young people are drugged. And if you look at our youth, 12, 13 years old, they're full-blown drug addicts. So where's that going to end in 10 years' time? You must be scared of your own kids. You must be scared to send them to school, because that is where they get the drugs from. It's all about will, right, and want. Do they want to stop gangsterism? Do they want to stop the drugs? It's all about that. At the time, they wanted to stop PAGAD. And maybe still today. Hopefully not. Because even them are becoming victims. Even their families are becoming victims. We need to put a stop to drugs, especially. Right? And we know gangsters exist because of drugs. They form these gangs so that they can protect their drug trade. Right? If there's no drugs, there's nothing to fight for. There's no turf to fight for, nothing. And the drugs is getting worse and worse and worse. You know, at first, obviously, if you cannot exist above ground, you exist underground. That's exactly what the ANC and all that parties did in the past. So because gangsters were so brutal towards our community and oppressive towards our community, we at first tried to change that, to make our communities feel confident that there is a group of people that will stand with him. There is a group of people that don't fear the gangsters. They don't fear gangsterism, right? And we will come to their defense if there's a need, right? And we made gangsters out there understand. We don't fear them, right? So in our local communities, in the Athlone area, things have changed a bit, especially in the Bridgetown area, where people don't have to live like they live in certain communities, like Menenberg or so, where the local person fear the gangster. In our communities, it's a different way. It's the other way around. They must fear us. They can exist, but they must go underground, right? We don't fear them, right? And that was one of our strategies, letting our community know at first that you have support. Gangsters would threaten people. Gangsters would make people feel that if anyone should oppose them, they will be killed, or they will be hurt, or their families will be hurt, all right? So now you also have some support of an organization you can run to if you feel threatened. And we don't hesitate to go to these gangs and make them understand, you hurt our innocent in our local community, you suffer the consequences. That was our first approach. I think today we want to approach things slightly different. We want to start with our youth programs, youth development, youth empowerment. We started with going into some form of rehabilitation at a small scale still, because of us not having the proper infrastructure, not being supported by government. You know, you got people that run local feeding schemes, and they can apply for grant in aid, and they get hundreds of thousands of rands to start their little feeding schemes. And here we an organization that actually want to do bigger and better things for our community. Right? We want to save our youth. We want to save our communities from drowning in drugs. So we're hoping that can also change where we will get support from, if not from government, from other organizations or even individuals or companies that will support us so that we can continue with interventions like this. If you look at the drug dealers in the 90s, they were very powerful. They controlled communities. And they controlled our local police stations even. Right? If you look at our drug dealers today, they don't have as much money, maybe a few. But at that time, if you look at the Lontis and the Stachis and all these people, they were powerful. You know, I mean, to go into a community like Sea Point and take it over completely, from Salt River right up, take it over. You don't see that today. But then again, that time, they were well supported by officials. They were well protected by police, right? The CCB at the time and that organizations, they were well supported. They worked for handlers at the time, and they were untouchable. And only a few is in that category today. Although the shootings and the gang fights and that got worse because, you know, instability is a tool and a weapon of politics. And it's being used wisely, especially in Cape Town. All right? And politicians should really wake up and come to the party and see what role they can play in fixing this. All right? Fixing this. I'm saying fixing this because why? Many of them are part and parcel of this nonsense of gangsterism. So it's destroying not only us, it's destroying them also. I mean, how many police, men and women have been killed by gangsters? And then you ask yourself, how many police, men and women or women were killed by the Zifos? Nothing. Nothing. So why do you fight us? Why have you? What reason do you have to fight us? Not long ago, we saw a police killing. Kinia, that case is still in court. They were killed by gangsters. Right? So our authorities seriously have to wake up before there's nothing left. A lot of people will tell you, even our clergy will tell you this is not the easy thing. I don't think it's a difficult fight. If all the good people in South Africa stand up today, stand together, our clergy, our politicians, our government decide this must stop, then it will stop. Right? If you go into a community like Menenberg, or take any other community, and you do a survey as to how many good people is in that community, and how many gangsters is in that community, and how many drug peddlers is in that community, you will see it's only a handful. Right? And we did a survey, you know, in a few communities. In my community, there's about 33 streets, Bridgetown. There's about 33 streets. And if I should sit here and think of all the streets, then I will come up with about 5 houses that need some attention. All right? That needs to be seen to. And there's over, how many people is in Bridgetown? 20, 30,000 probably. And there's only 5 houses. That is a problem. So why do we allow us? It's the same as apartheid. You know, the minority ruled us with power for many, many, many years, and we allowed it until a few people said enough is enough. And they mobilized communities, and at the end of the day, the powerful apartheid regime fell to its knees. We can do the same. The big question is, does our government have the will to stop this? Do they want to stop this? The big question is, our clergy is powerful, but they don't realize how powerful they are. They have got the bulk of the people that support them, but they don't realize that. Or maybe they just fell into a comfort zone where they feel, I can't sacrifice myself, for this. I want to live a lavishing life. And if I'm going to commit to this, I'm not going to be able to live that life. But at the end of the day, what a nice life to live without crime. We don't have that privilege in Cape Town at the moment. We have to always think wherever we go, our safety. We can't even drive safely to work anymore because somebody might smash and grab you. So our clergy really, really, really need to come to the fore and help the communities to bring that necessary change. The media played a big role in turning our communities against us. I always say, I also belong to the local neighborhood watch. In fact, I'm the chairperson of the local neighborhood watch in my area. So already we see there's at least that change. Because at that time, you could not belong to any other organization that falls under the banner of government. So at least that changed. So maybe working harder to convince our authorities, we can change more. So I always make the statement when I'm in that meetings that what is a vigilante? According to me, that is a person that is vigilant. So how can you, when you ask me something, you always end your conversation by saying, please guys, be vigilant. Now I'm being vigilant. All right, you want to convince people to be vigilant. But then at the end of the day, when they are vigilant, you call them a vigilante. Then they're not good anymore. So I always make that example and say, if my vigilance make me a vigilante, then so be it. Yeah, like I said, I'm also involved with the local neighborhood watch. I'm also a member of the development forum in my community. And I also work closely with many other organizations. And that is one of our aims, always, to assist and to help, right? So any organization can come to us and ask, for instance, for security organizations that work in their communities, and we will play that role. We also go out to communities to bring awareness. We want to do it more, not having to worry about the authorities that's going to arrest us because we're there. I remember we went into a Nova Park, right? We had meetings with the clergy of a Nova Park, and then they wanted marches. At first, they wanted peace talks with the gangs, and we said, whatever you want. We don't want to come into your community and dictate to you what you must do, right? Although we don't agree with peace talks. Gangsterism shouldn't exist. It should not exist. How can we bring two gangs together and tell them to live in peace with one another? Giving them a carte blanche to sell drugs in our community, because that is the price that you're paying for that peace talks. I will never ever encourage any community to have peace talks with gangsters. Their talk must be straight and simple. We don't want you to exist in our communities. All right? So either you stop, or you remove yourself, or we remove you from our local community. And then we started marches, and one day we were pulled over by the authorities. Right? And gangsters were scared. They were actually running when we had our convoy through the community. And we were pulled over by authorities. And we were told they don't want us in that local community. We're not needed there. Right? And for 2 hours I was actually being, if I can use the word, harassed by these cops. Right? And not long after that, the shooting in an overpark started. And the shooting went on, and dozens of people were killed. We read a week ago or 2 weeks ago about these youngsters that was killed, having a birthday party. Right? And one of the words that always stuck in my brain was this policeman telling me that they are the first responders to crime, not us. We don't want the jobs. We don't want to be the first responders. We were there because we were asked by the community in a state of distress to come assist them. We didn't go in there to kill anybody. We went there because we just wanted to show these gangsters, you cannot keep our people hostage year in and year out and get away with us. Right? And after 2 hours, I left. They said we can go. What changes did they bring in an overpark? Nothing. And a month ago, we saw the law enforcement going into an overpark, and even they were attacked. Vehemently attacked. And these people got a lousy 800 rand bail for assaulting and almost killing these cops. 800 rand. Pathetic. I spoke to a Mexican guy not long ago, and he actually said to me, he prefer Mexico than Cape Town, because Cape Town is a very dangerous place. So if you look at the Mexicans being fearful of Cape Town, how bad is Cape Town not? You know? And we know that one of our suburbs here, or communities, are being called the murder capital of the world. In South Africa, the murder capital of the world. And we're not doing anything about it. We just had an election. Nothing is really being spoken about our situations. Right? And I have said changes were made within our policing structure. But we want to see physical changes in our communities. Our people are still dying. Our people are still being drugged. Drugs are freely available on our streets and even on our schools. And our newly elected ministers, they don't speak about the stuff. They don't come up with a strategy and a plan how they're going to change this. You know? There's always some form of a negotiation with criminals and with crime, about crime. There's no negotiations with our peaceful community people. I told you I belong to the Community Development Forum in Bridgetown. Never ever have we been approached by any politician, by any parliamentarian, by any minister as to say, how can we help you to bring changes in your local community? And that is where it must start. If everyone work in their local communities, the fight becomes so much easier. Because you know your community. You just need their support and their assurance that you're not going to become a victim of them tomorrow. Because that is what what government structures is all about. The minute you start to oppose things that they support, then you become the victim. And I mean, PAGAD members, new or old, G-Force, new or old, they know exactly what we're talking about. Right? They arrested people, sending out a clear message to our local communities. This is what will happen to you if you join this fight, if you join organizations like this. So obviously people is going to be fearful and not support, right? But they support silently. Today in Cape Town, people are crying for organizations like PAGAD and the G-Force because they've got nobody else to turn to. In desperation, they are crying for these organizations to come out and to come help. And at this stage, I have to say, we seriously want to help. We do not want to oppose our authorities. That is never part and parcel of our agenda. But then they must come to the party, right? We want to help them. We want them to tell us, look here, cover that angle for us. And we will cover the rest. Work together with them, right? We're doing exactly the same as what neighborhood watches do, just on a broader scale. So why do they accept neighborhood watches? Because why the neighborhood watch operate under their banner. If they tell the neighborhood watch to stop, then that neighborhood watch must stop. But being an independent organization, we're not subjected to that law and that ruling, right? But still, we say we want to help. In the framework, obviously, they don't have to look at us as vigilantes. And if you speak vigilante, I would like to hear the definition of that by somebody else outside our circle, because the word terrorist will probably come up. A local man in the street, if you ask him what is a vigilante, he says it's a terrorist. We're not terrorizing our communities. I'm sitting here with a few other guys here. I can put their pics on any Facebook page and ask, were you ever terrorized by one of these guys? So how can we be terrorists? But those gangsters out there, they are the real terrorists. So if our government still pursue to work with gangs, then we say they support terrorism because they support the people that terrorize our local communities. People in Cape Town, they must start to realize if we don't do something about this, we're going to drown. Right? So we playing that role of the safety net. Why don't you want to be part of the safety net rather? Why do you want to drown? We've got a new Minister of Police. We've seen new things happening. We've seen the Metro Police and the law enforcement and SAPS now working under one banner. And we're hoping as the G-Force that an organization like us will be seen as legitimate and will be accepted. And maybe we can re-look at things if things change in this part of South Africa. I just want to end off by saying soon we will be initiating a form of umbrella where we will form or want to form a coalition against crime, where we will work with other organizations and get other organizations on board. So you don't have to be part of the G-Force. You can be just a local organization that you spoke about now, the two organizations, and be part of that coalition. But you running your own thingy, right? But you are against crime, you know. All of us suffers from crime, and mostly from drugs. Almost every household suffer from drugs. So we want to start that, and we are prepared to work with any organization that is against crime. that is against drugs and gangsterism. Any organization. Although we're a splinter group and our mainstream will probably not feel the same about what I'm saying now, but even if we have to work with them, we are prepared to do that, right? Because crime is the common enemy here. Crime. I'm not saying criminals, I'm saying crime, because those very criminals used to be nice young children yesterday, and some of them have become victims of society, and now they're criminals. So we have to get rid of crime. And the drugs, important. There must not be drugs in our communities.